My name is Rabbi Tzvi Rogan, and I am a writer and a lecturer on the subject of the Temple Mount and the future temple. We are sitting now in the tunnel. It's called a tunnel, but it's not really a tunnel.
Valley.
This is called a tunnel, but it's not a tunnel. What is it really? It's really the basement of the buildings above.
I believe that in Hebrew it's called Haggai.
Well, I'm going back beyond that. Okay? Or no, actually forward from that. There was a valley called the Tyropoeon Valley, which came into the old city approximately where Damascus Gate is, and came in this direction, cuts through the western wall here, and exits the Temple Mount 28 meters east of the southwest corner.
Which you have never witnessed yourself.
Well, the valley is now filled in.
Not this, but after it cuts through the temple.
I've been inside, if that's your question.
You have?
Yes, hundreds of times. The Crusaders, the Christian Crusaders, were fighting against the Muslim rulers of the city, and at one point they fought to a standstill, and they forced a compromise which involved dividing the city, and the division was made along the valley. After the Muslims again reconquered everything,
this is all new stuff to me. Completely.
They said, we are not going to have this happen again, and they filled in the valley. So if you would go on a high tower and look down, you might see a slight lowering of the rooftops, but you would not see the valley itself. The valley itself was filled with buildings, and what they call the tunnel, the Western Wall tunnel, is really the basements of those buildings.
Correct.
And it wasn't dug by the Israeli government. It was revealed again, even though it had been already revealed in the 1800s by Charles Warren, who was an English lieutenant in the English army, and he was also an engineer who came here on a dual mission of both spying and religious purposes. So, inside here we have Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah is the place on which the first and second temples were built. Before that, it's the place where Abraham bound Isaac, and we believe also that it's the place that the dust was collected to create the first person, Adam, and it is the place where Cain and Abel brought their sacrifices, and the place where Noah brought his sacrifice after the flood. So this is a place that has been holy for thousands of years. Now, if you will ask the Muslim on the street in the 1920s, what is the significance of this place, he will tell you, and as it said in the guidebook of the Muslim authorities, the Waqf, this is the place of the Temple of Solomon. If you will ask the same type of person today, he will not know about that because they've been denying it now for 40 years. He will tell you that Muhammad went to heaven from this rock, the rock inside of the Dome of the Rock. They will point to Gabriel's footprint and various other things on the rock. Understand, in the year 688 or so, Abdul Malik came here. Abdul Malik was, I think, 3 rulers after Muhammad. It wasn't that they wanted to establish the holiness of the place because Muhammad went to heaven there. They wanted to establish the holiness of Muhammad by saying that he went to heaven from this place, which had already been a holy place for thousands of years.
But you're not busy disproving their worthiness, but rather improving our worthiness.
Well, our job here, we have to rebuild the temple. And
this, by the way, is what interests me personally the most to hear from you.
Okay. So, the first temple was built by King Solomon. It was destroyed by the Babylonians. The second temple was rebuilt by Zerubbabel and was destroyed ultimately. First of all, it was refurbished by Herod, and then ultimately destroyed by the Romans in the year 70. And along the way, there were 4 attempts, we shall say, to rebuild the temple. The first one in the year 118, the second in the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt, in approximately between 131 and 135, the third in the time of Julian II, who was the emperor of Rome in 361, and Hillel II was the head of the Jews in Israel. And the fourth time, in the time of Choshua II of Persia, and Bustanai is most known from the Jewish side of the story.
Which most people are completely unaware of.
Right, but the Christians are very well aware of it. For instance, when Professor Mazur was doing the digging on the southern side of the Temple Mount,
An Israeli archaeologist.
and what you see on the southern side is his diggings, the Christian bishops and so on came to see the site, and they accused him, aren't you really planning to rebuild the temple the way they tried in the time of Joshua? So even though these are not commonly known among the Jews, among the scientific or literary class, they are well known. So here we are, 1967. Let's go back. Previous to that, there was one of the commentators on the Torah named Rabbeinu Bechaya, approximately 800 years ago. Rabbeinu Bechaya, in his discussing the circumcision of Ishmael, says that in the merit of the circumcision of Ishmael at the age of 13, the Ishmaelites will rule for 1,330 years. They conquered in 637. If you add the 1,330 years, you come to 1967. 1967 was the first time that the Jews had the opportunity to rebuild the temple that they didn't try.
But that time frame doesn't include the occupation of the 200-year, approximately, occupation by the Crusaders. In other words, the dates that you gave from 1 to 1 also included inside it the period.
Yeah, but the Crusader, I mean, I'm not such a historian of Crusader history, but it was kind of a back and forth kind of a thing.
Okay.
I mean, you can say that it's a coincidence, you can say what you like. I'm just reporting, this is what it said. 1967, the soldiers came in. The elders inside, when the soldiers were marching to the Temple Mount, said, we knew you were coming back.
Coming back?
Yes.
Meaning that you're the incarnation of whom?
Well, the previous Jews who had been in the Temple Mount.
Seriously?
Yes. And the rabbinic public was not ready. The rabbinic public had gone into a period of stasis, of treading water, just holding on by our fingernails, and were not prepared to make real decisions on what to do. For instance, you have to say, precisely here goes the altar. Precisely here is the Holy of Holies. This is how we make the crown of the high priest, and so on and so forth.
Are you of the understanding that Yeboinei Beis Hamikdash, the construction of the temple, to come, I don't want to go into any details, but that this particular thing was actually because there is a model from which dimensions and orientations and so forth can go.
The construction of the third temple is described in some detail in the book of Ezekiel, the last 5 chapters, I believe, of Ezekiel, and it's different
as
than
a prophecy.
Yes, and it's different than the temple which was created when they came back from Babylonia. And the explanation given was that they didn't understand fully what Ezekiel has written. That was the explanation given by Maimonides, and the explanation given by Rashi, commentary in Europe in the 1100s or 1000s, was that the structure of the Ezekiel temple is the structure of the temple which will last forever. And
there is such a concept?
There is such a concept.
And it's rooted deeply in Jewish tradition and understanding?
All of these things are not widely studied. What will be, will be. And so we are feeling our way. And
is that what you feel?
It's very clear. I mean,
I deliberately asked if that's what you feel.
Oh, absolutely.
Not what you believe, but what you feel.
Well, feel, believe, you see, all of these things, my stomach talks, my brain talks, but we try to make an agreement on things. You have people who will tell you on such and such a date the Messiah will come. Or that the Messiah has come, or this. The general principle, those who know don't say. Those who say don't know.
This is
There are people who know, but they don't say. I know a very great man who made a prediction in the 1970s. And his prediction was that by the time that the children, not yet born, of those people he was talking to, would grow up, the Messiah would have come already.
am I at liberty to ask what this gentleman's name
Rabbi
was?
Yaakov Kamenetsky. Kamenetsky. He spoke at a convention of Aguda, which is a religious organization. In Israel, it's a political organization. There was a guy named Mendel Cheshin. And Mendel Cheshin, during the first Gulf War,
From the Cheshin family?
this I don't know, he was going around during the Gulf War telling people that this was the war of Gog and Magog.
Okay.
And it isn't so. It
Sorry,
didn't
how
happen.
was Gog and Magog defined exactly?
Well, we'll know it when
In
we
Jewish
see it,
terms?
hopefully.
Okay.
It is
I'm of the humble opinion that we're deep in the depths right now where Am Yisrael is not being touched, but
well,
which is Gog and Magog in any case. But that's a personal opinion.
I mean, I will say, in a political sense, we are definitely in the middle of a war.
Yeah.
And we have been for a while.
Yeah.
The problem is that one side doesn't want to admit that we're in a war. The United States is under attack, traditional Europe is under attack, and Israel is, of course, under attack.
David, you wish to ask something?